So, like you can see, we actually could set things up without even, bringing in Express. We're just working on our models at this point, but we are going to end up exporting from this file. So let's actually just start setting things up. We're going to have, I always like to have a function called sync and seed. Like, especially in your development environment, um, let's take this here. It just makes life easier because if you have data in your system, it's always easier to display that data as opposed to having to build forms to get the data into the system. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call sync and seed. And just for the moment, let's just worry about whether we have an exception here. And even here, we'll just put a then and say success. So let's just take a look. We've got our sync and seed here. Let's make sure that we do this correctly. So we end up seeing success here. That's great. Let's actually put some data into the system. Before we do that, let's actually put a couple of definitions here. Again, I'm going to do my destructuring here. Let me pull out string. Let's do this. Put a little bit more work here. We'll say that there's going to be a first name, which is going to be a type of sequelize string. And we're going to sort of copy that and say there's going to be a last name. We could also go over here and just, maybe put in allow null if it's false. And as we're adding these in, we could just make sure that things are working. For a story, we're probably going to have a title. And so our title, we'll say that the type is going to be sequelize string. Again, we could do an allow null false. Let's actually look at something new here. We're going to end up doing a rating. So you'll be able to rate a story. And this lets actually use a decimal. There's a couple of ways you could do this. But we're going to end up using decimal. You could also end up using a float, but the decimal is probably better for this because we'll have some ratings which will be like 5.1 or 5.2. Decimals are also something that you would end up using if you were going to end up storing currency values. So let's make sure this works. And what we're going to do is we're going to start seeding some data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over here and say users. And we'll have first name of Mo and a last name of Green. And we'll have Larry is going to be blue. And we'll have Curly could be red. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create these users. And I really like this is really, I think, where async await works really well because what I could do is I could actually just take these variables and reuse them a couple of ways where I'm going to do some destructuring. And I'm going to say I've got Mo, Larry, and Curly. And how am I going to get them? Well, I'm going to do a promise.all. And I'm going to take my users. And I'm going to say users, I want to map you. I've got a user. And I've got a one-liner that says I'm going to create this user. So each of these are my users. And if I'm going to do this, let me also put an await here because I want to end up using these. And let's just take a quick look here. I think I'm probably missing a parenthesis here. And so we can see that these values end up getting inserted. And the reason I like this is that I could end up setting up 3 stories here. So now I could say stories, and these are going to be my stories. So let's go over here. We'll say a title is Node is great. And we'll do another title. I love Sequelize. And we'll do one more. JavaScript rocks. And for each of these, let's actually put in, now they're going to have an author ID, because we ended up setting up that to say the foreign key for these is going to be an author. So let's say Mo is pretty prolific. We'll use author ID for Mo for these two. And let's say Curly is going to have this other one. This is not going to break anything, but it's not going to insert the records yet. But let's cheat a little bit. And just so we can capture these later on, because we're going to need them, we'll say this is going to be node, Sequelize. That's actually probably not a great idea. Let's call it Sequelize story, node story. And the last one is going to be JS story. And we could do a promise.all, but this is going to be stories.map. This is going to be a story. And for this, we're going to have story, create story. And they'll get inserted. I could see the author ID was passed in here, which is what I was looking for. And at this point, we could end up doing some reviews. So let's go over here. Let's say that we're going to have reviews. And let's just start out with maybe 2 reviews here. We'll go over here and we'll say that the reviewer ID for our first review is going to be Larry ID. And we'll go over here and we'll say that the story that he's going to end up reviewing, the story ID is going to be our node story ID. And let's also say that Curly is going to also comment on the node story ID. Let's say Curly gives it a rating of 4.3. We'll set this up so we'll put some validation in here later on. And we'll say that Larry is going to not really be so crazy about this story. He's going to give it a rating of 2. Let's just make sure that we don't have any JavaScript errors here. And we're going to do the same thing that we ended up doing before. And let's just call this Larry review, Curly review. And this is going to be, again, we'll do an await, promise.all. And what are we going to do here? We're going to take our reviews and we're going to end up mapping over them. And I see a mistake that I have to fix in a second. And this is going to be review.create review. And I think I've got all my parentheses here, but this is not review ID. This is going to be the reviewer ID. And we went up here and we said that a review belongs to a user as a reviewer, and this is a user, okay? And also a review belongs to a story that we did an alias, and so here we have the story ID. And if we go over here, let's fix our arrow function here. I thought there was something that didn't look quite right. We need to catch our review. One more parenthesis. And we'll see that we have our reviews set up here as well. So, I mean, just a quick cursory look at this. We could say select star from reviews. And we should see our ratings, we see our IDs here. Again, let's make this a little bit smaller so maybe we could see it. Not going to look that great here. But here we've got our story ID. Again, it's overlapping a little bit. Could make it really tiny. Or another thing we could do is we could just say, hey, do me a favor, select. Don't forget, if you're calling this here, you have to put these in quotes. I could say select reviewer ID from reviews. Now I've got the reviewer's ID. I could say select the story ID again, because Postgres will end up ignoring these quotes. That'll actually just lowercase them. We don't want it to lowercase them. So here we could also see what the story ID is. And we've got some data in our system that we can end up now using for our API.